Your topic is a very timely one because professional higher education for sustainable development and then creating a change that endures. This topic, in fact, resonates with me on a personal level also because you were kind enough to mention my recent, jobs or tasks or responsibilities, but my background is as an economist and a university teacher. So my academic research, first professional experiences were precisely on regional development, and it was clear to me that any strategy, in order to endure, has to be anchored on knowledge, on qualification, on higher education. Your topic also resonates as I look across Europe. The challenges we face in terms of economic recovery, the digital revolution, the transition to a greener economy, all these challenges require us to raise our level in terms of skills and in terms of education. I would actually locate here in the skills, in the upskills, the reskills, the capacity of people to add value as the critical element for the success of our recovery. So today I will structure my intervention around two key points. First, the big picture, our plans at the European level, our instruments that we have created to try to build back better after this terrible crisis, to make Europe green and digital with a better quality of life. And second, another topic, the key role that higher education will play in this revolution. I'll try to just to stimulate the debate. Well, so on starting by the first part, the part on European crisis, how we are trying to recover, and what follows. First, our plans at the European level for the economic recovery and beyond. On this, I would like to underline that from several angles, the response from Europe, I would say at least from the side of the Commission, but only the Commission, also the European Parliament, also the Council. But for this time, the Europeans' response to the crisis has been unprecedented, and unprecedented at several levels. First, unprecedented in scale, because for the first time, we are using AAA credit ratings, so the quality of Europe as a debtor to borrow on financial markets. So instead of each member state having to go to the financial markets and borrow by itself, it is Europe, the 27 member states, anchored into the Commission that are going. So it's the Commission that is going to the markets under the control and the guarantee of all its members. And this has created and will create a 724 billion euro recovery investment fund. This we named it the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And cohesion policy, which I've the honor to responsible for, has been boosted to 373 billion euros, its largest ever. So these two big, instruments create a once in a generation opportunity for change and for building back better. That's what we really want. But the response from Europe has been also unprecedented in unity. As Europeans, we are responding to the crisis together. I already mentioned it in the previous topic. We could only have dreamed of such unity in the last crisis because reality was completely different. And also unprecedented in the speed of response. In the last crisis, you may recall that the crisis started or became visible in 2008. But when Mario Draghi, which is really a landmark, said whatever it takes, it was 2012. So it's 4 or 5 years to get Europe to act together, because Europe was caught by surprise. This time, we put together a credible response in 4 or 5 months. So it was really a speedy response. And also in cohesion policy, we had, for the first time, within 4 or 5 weeks of the pandemic becoming visible, we had emergency support on the ground. And we created an instrument, we called it CRI, that goes for Coronavirus Response Investment Initiative. And we, under this instrument, what is this instrument is to allow to change legislation so that all these funds, regional fund, social fund, that a cohesion fund, you could, if you still had money, and this money for these funds, it's organized in 7-year periods. If you still had money available in your envelopes, you could all of a sudden, and well, of a sudden, I mean about 10 days, 15 days, reprogram it to buy masks, to buy ventilators, to support small and medium companies, the restaurants, the small companies that started producing protective masks, but also to buy computers for children at school, or to, I mean, to hire extra staff for the hospitals or the health centers. And so this was a complete change in the way we usually manage the funds. And the European countries, they all used it for what they needed in this emergency situation. But 22 billion euros of support were all of a sudden, and throughout this period, redirected 22 billion. It's a lot, for the regions, and for in the countries, and for the actions that were more in need. And we have granted, until now, we are still calculating it, about 500,000 small and medium companies with working capital to keep them afloat. We supported around 2.5 million people in short-term working arrangements and in healthcare, and from masks to ventilators, as I mentioned, everything was financed, sometimes at 100%, which means without member states or other entities putting in any budget. There is one final unprecedented aspect to Europe's response to the crisis. We are using it as a springboard, a once in a generation opportunity, in fact, to build back better, creating the conditions for the digital revolution, and the transition to the green economy. So we are doing this, but we are doing it trying to change the quality of our economy. Over half of the recovery and resilience facility that originates the recovery and resilience plans that all member states are preparing and presenting. But half of this fund will be devoted to the green and digital transformation. 37% to ecological transformation, 20% to digital transformation. But in addition, Horizon Europe, our research program, will have its largest ever budget to support research and innovation. It will be 95 billion euros. Erasmus Plus doubled its funds to 20 billion euros. So far, we reached 10 million students since the creation of Erasmus, of the program that you so well know, and it was created in 1987. In the next 7 years, we'll try to reach another 10 million, focusing on the new competencies needed. Similarly, about half or more of cohesion policy will focus on green and digital transition. Every region starts at a different point with different sectors, different challenges. So support to this transformation cannot be one size fits all. It must be tailored to the local context. Some regions will have to invest in better and smart public transport systems, for instance. Some regions will have to invest in renewable energy networks, recycling systems. Others will have to fundamentally change the business ecosystem, becoming more innovative, improving digital skills and capacity. Digitization and the growth of teleworking also offer a new opportunity for a better pattern of settlement in Europe. In the last decade or so, a few large urban centers have set the pace in innovation, in growth, and in job creation. Yet, small and medium sized centers, and I will underline this, often have the potential for a very high quality of life. And we must seize the new digital opportunities and make every region in Europe economically attractive. This could create thriving small centers, medium centers, without the costs of congestions of the big capitals, of the big cities, diversifying our economy. It would also help relieve congestion problems in the large urban centers. We need to rebalance growth. So these are our plans at the European level. Recovery, driven by once in a generation investments, building back better, the green and digital revolution, and making sure that every region benefits, with no region left behind. And this is our vision. What we do, what do we need to make this a reality? And this is the question that brings me to the role, the key role, I would say, of skills and higher education. Well, digital technologies have been crucial in the last year. We wouldn't have dreamt of speaking like this, uh, and will be crucial in the longer term as well. Yet, a recent study from before the pandemic suggested that only 1 in 5 European enterprises were digitally ready. You may be surprised with this, but it's what it gives. So, about half of the European population also doesn't have basic digital skills. So, we have got to be very careful that we don't create a massive digital divide. If you take into account that the network is not available everywhere in Europe, so we have got a lot of investment to do from that perspective as well. In recent years, nevertheless, the number of people with digital skills has been rising, for sure. Uh, there remains, however, a shortage of ICT specialists, and this may be calling on you. 56% of small and medium sized companies that recruited ICT specialists during 2018 reported that vacancies were very hard to fill. Moreover, there is a clear digital divide at the regional level, and I was just referring to it, with rural and remote areas lagging behind, not just in terms of skills, but in infrastructures. Skill shortages also extend to the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, where companies do not find the graduates they need. And women are clearly underrepresented in most countries of Europe. The Portuguese presidency just organized a very successful social summit in Porto. One of the key messages is that we need to move from where we are now. We are just protecting jobs. We have got very quickly to move from job protection to real job creation. And it is this transition that now has got to concentrate our effort and our energies in line with the new economic paradigm that we want to build and I just expressed to you. In the coming years, we'll see many new activities in the digital and green areas. These new activities will require new qualifications. In all these areas, from digital technology to STEM to new green activities, it is crucial to ensure that the next generation of Europeans is not left behind and that the generation gap does not widen. The role of higher education institutions, including in particular, I would say, the Polytechnic Institutes, will be absolutely crucial. Already in 2014-2020 programs, this pluriannual framework on which we anchor the cohesion policy, the European Regional Development Fund, for which I am responsible, invested nearly 7 billion euros in education, training, lifelong learning. For example, 7 million young people or children benefited from new or improved facilities. We are still drawing up the new programs, which are done with the member states. But it is clear that education and training will remain a priority. They must. Our investments will provide conditions for modern education, including access to internet, modernization of buildings, purchase of digital equipment and e-learning applications, and platforms for higher education facilities. Higher education patterns will be absolutely crucial in the planning and delivery of such projects. We rely on your expertise and capacity. Education investments must be based on a sound mapping of the needs. We also rely on your expertise and capacity in the preparation of our programs. We estimate that around 80 billion euros from the new cohesion programs will be invested in innovation and digital capacity. This support is tailored to the local context through smart specialization strategies. These are strategies that we ask each region to develop as a precondition. We call it an enabling condition for funds to be distributed. The key innovation stakeholders of a region, public, private, research, academia, working together in a discovery process to find the strength and opportunities of each region on which to build upon. We now have 185 across Europe smart specialization strategies. Academic and higher education expertise is a crucial input to these strategies. So, in conclusion, as Albert Einstein would say, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Europe is planning big changes. Our ambition includes, as I mentioned, first, a long, resilient, sustained recovery. Second, a green and digital revolution. And third, to do all this while leaving no region behind. In fact, we believe we can spread economic activity more equitably, building on smaller centers. To meet these ambitions, we are assembling investments that amount to once in a generation opportunity. But going on with the quoting Einstein, all these changes require more than just massive investment. And that's what we tend to talk about. It's money. What we need is this money to be applied with your expertise, your intelligence. I urge you to get involved in projects. I urge you to get involved in programming. The projects include qualifications, learning resources, collaborations between small and medium companies and universities. The programming includes the work being done now to prepare the new cohesion programs and the recovery and resilience facility, the new Horizon Europe and Erasmus Plus, as well as the ongoing work with regional smart specialization strategies. And polytechnic institutes are particularly well placed for this work as they bring together higher educations, a skills oriented approach, applied research, and a good spatial awareness of the regions where they are located. I urge you to get involved. As the title of this conference said, we must use higher education to power sustainable development and create a change that endures.
One of our participants addressed you a very specific question, which I will start now to read, and which is based with the skills and also the relation of those skills and higher education institutions to the role that they have to play. And so the question is, how are the digital and transferable skills needed for our recovery and future development defined by the Commission? How does the Commission define them? And how do you see the role of higher education institutions in the identification and development of those skills?
Well, shall I answer immediately, or you want to put
Yeah,
questions together? Okay,
we can do it like that.
I can immediately answer. Yes. Well, if we take seriously, and we are taking seriously the new opportunities to build in reality, to build back better, what we are talking about is to try to make Europe, and the commitment is there, and there is a law. Europe will be carbon neutral in 2050, and will reduce by 55% its emissions in 2030. We From these funds, uh, half of them will have as a preconditions to be used, will have to be concentrated on digital, and there is a lot of convergence between the use of digital and the climate objectives, because if you manage traffic with all the capacity of the modeling of the traffic, of course you avoid congestion, you avoid pollution. If you transform your production process in a more climate uh, performant kind of productive system, of course you are going to necessarily to digitalize a lot of, and to use artificial intelligence to avoid bottlenecks and to avoid losses. And so if you do a circular economy, so digital comes very nicely with new technologies, and with this climate oriented reshape of the way we commute, of the way we move around, of the way we consume, of the way we produce, of the way we manage our cities, we manage our waste. So this is a big transformation. This will be a massive investment opportunity. And in this massive investment opportunity, I think digital is at the core. Then, of course, there are a lot of shades of what you can do. But there is also something new I would like to exchange with you, because for a long time, Europe had a very strange conception. I would say it from probably from your perspective, but that was the concept, uh, to have no industrial policy. The concept was, okay, by competition in the internal market, different member states compete with each other, and so I'm oversimplifying the message, but this is the basis of the industrial policy. At that time, in fact, Europe was a big producer in the world, with the big industrial powers, and with time, this became very evident that this was not enough, because with globalization, and now this is one of the lessons learned with the crisis, it became also very evident that you cannot let go crucial parts of your industrial profile, because, and this happened with the vaccines, because if you lose the essence of the critical elements, the critical procedures, critical knowledge of producing vaccines, you become totally dependent on other stakeholders in the world, China or Russia. It happens with computer science, because Europe cannot be completely dependent on companies that are, actors from Russia, from China, from the United States. So it happens with the research on medicine. It happens with the research on the oceans. It happens with the control of technology on batteries, because we are moving electric. And then when we are moving electric and renewable energy, we need to have more and more research on how to do batteries, and how to put more energy power in smaller sized containers, so to speak. So this changed our mind as well. So now Europe is also defining ecosystems at the European level, around some, microprocessors, around digital knowledge about, and computer knowledge about artificial intelligence, about battery science. And there are both in Horizon. You have these missions. There is one that is very dear to the Portuguese, that is oceans. But now we have got to put content in this vision of oceans. So what do we want to do in research, or what does Europe want to do in research? So this change, together with the impulse for a completely new framework for investment, creates the right paradigm for very skilled people to be active actors of change. And I think we need, and this is my last comment. I'm sorry to expand a bit, but this is also my last comment. We need new entrepreneurs, because I mean, we I value very much, and all my life I did so. I value very much everybody that can put some raw materials, people, assets together and create a new product, and they have a value added. But now, definitely, the traditional way, that is someone that is not qualified, understands a certain production process and repeats it in a kind of what we say mere reproducing what he learned how to do. This is not really, I mean, enough, because the speed of knowledge from all the different angles is so fast, so big, that you will not be able to adapt and to follow up on the value chain when you move upwards in sophistication of the product. And we saw that. I mean, the most basic example is, for instance, textiles, in which there was a lot of capacity know-how. I always valued it a lot, but the truth is that a lot of workers that could do a certain job when everything was very mechanic, when you became more sophisticated and more digitally controlled, there was a lot of difficulty in moving forward. And if you have a technological center that upskills, reskills people, that helps also to create new entrepreneurs that bring in value added and a new concept to the market, that's where the funds are justified. Because the supporting the mere reproduction of the system in a kind of oil, a kind of spread, uh, I mean, it's fragile, and you can add value in all sectors. I'm not a person that thinks that certain sectors are great and other sectors are just to be forgotten. You can add value in all sectors. You can add value, and it happened with all the evolution again in textiles, that was considered the traditional industry. Whereas if you just have the location in a certain country or region of a very standard process, like you had with certain companies, of digital companies, that just located very labor based phases of the production process, and the factory would go away as soon as the wages would go up 10% or 5% to move the factory somewhere else. It may be a very sophisticated sector, but what matters is the value added that you bring in the place where you locate, and the kind of sophistication of the work that you employ. So these concepts, I think, open a new vision. But you are actors of the change. You cannot sit there because you are too qualified to be just observing. You have to interfere. You have to propose. You have to come to the market, and you have to question and to challenge the concepts of the previous generation, because we did what we could, but we are not perfect. Far from that. We
Oh,
count on you.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this great and clear message. I will try to sum up some of the questions that we're getting lots of questions. Also because the subject is a subject that it's very relevant for us, and you have touched several key points, not only regarding research but also regarding the development of different areas like inland areas, less developed ones. And we know that higher education and mainly polytechnic institutions have a key I would say role to play in the development of those areas. And so trying to cross here some of the questions that our audience made regarding smart specialization. How do you see, for example, in the case of smart specialization and the role that smart specialization had today, how is it aligned with ERA? And also, how do you believe, or how do you see that could be the role of polytechnic higher institutions in the development of these domains? And lastly, just because then you normally made a large answer, so that you can wrap up everything on the same question. How do you see that higher education institutions can identify and help the development of the necessary skills to follow up and to wrap up these changes and the changes that are needed? Because we know, and you mentioned us, that the European Union has been able to answer on a really fast pace to this change and to the pandemic situation. We all know that the academia and research had played a crucial role in this answer, right? But how do you see that this adaptation to all the necessary changes that need to be done, considering the smart specialization strategies, not only for regions but also for countries?
Well, it's a broad question, and I'll try to wrap up, touching upon all the elements that you mentioned. Um, well, the purpose of you touched upon smart specialization, skills, and centers and alternative centers. Uh, you know, uh, Take a country. If you have 70% of the population located in areas where there is no economic dynamism at all, and that is stagnant and stays in this situation decade after decade. Uh, I mean, uh, certain countries think that if you over concentrate investment in the most developed poles of those countries, that this will eventually uh, have spillovers on the surrounding area, and that on the other hand, for certain more backward countries, that this is it's the only way to be able to compete with the most developed ones. I think both things are wrong, because the from experience we see that the most evident impact on surrounding areas is just brain drain, and it goes like that until you have such congestion problems in the more developed areas, that in fact the economies of scale become these economies of scale and these economies of agglomeration. And if you look at the most developed countries in Europe, they are multipolar. Only the very, very backward countries, or not countries that are not, I don't want to have a negative connotation with backward, but the less developed countries, the ones that still have a lot to go, uh, namely in Africa or in Latin America, they over concentrate in big metropolis, and in fact, it's I mean, the costs of living there become almost impossible to bear, and then you start having pockets of poverty in the big metropolis, and of the social divide. So it's, I mean, I'm looking at the most developed countries in Europe and less developed countries in other parts of the world. But in fact, this is very schematic, but it's very true. On the other hand, if you have a country that for which 70% of the population is under 70%, 65 percent of GDP per capita in relation to the average of the EU, you can have 150 in the most developed center, but mathematically the average will always be low, because you have a population that weights zero point 0.7 against zero point 0.3. And so the country itself will always be a backward country if you don't have this kind of intelligence to reshape. Now, this is not obvious. This is not. I mean, the instinct is that everybody moves to the big centers, and so if we don't have a policy to contradict this trend, it will be endlessly going like this. And this is the cruise of the small centers versus big cities. When we are betting and when we are making a big effort to add value, to add innovation, to add know-how, what we are trying to do is to look at the region, not on a static kind of approach, but on a dynamic one, and to try to see in a region where we have already some seeds on which we can put some water and put some manure so that it will grow into a tree. So the smart specialization logic is to try to not to disperse things, not to finance things that don't have a connection with the real life but it's not a static concept. So we revise it. It's not rigid. Having said this, the critical thing is how to mutually feed the knowledge that comes from the education sector, from the training sector, into the economy, and how the economy can really get the benefit from this research, from this knowledge, from this capacity, from these skills. And there is no, I mean, it's in concrete, in practice, that you can do it or not. And I hope we do it, and I hope we do it all over Europe, because on the other hand, with the use of this digital, you don't care where I am, I don't care where you are. This gives a huge opportunity again for smaller centers. If they develop an intelligent strategy of development and of adding value to what they can do, they can really become very interesting locations in which the physical distance is not as important as it used to be. And so, even now, and if I can, I don't know if it is very, but there are some podcasts from I think it was from The Economist, exactly on the discussion on the smaller centers that now through the pandemic rediscovered capacity to be part of a network that beforehand at least you only accepted theoretically, but you didn't accept it in full. So now you can really work not only from a small apartment in a big city, because the need to be physically there it can be easily substituted by coming once a week and living in another place where you can grow a family, when you can have a good life. And so there are lots of work that is even academic work that is starting to be done now, and that shows how much you can benefit from from having another approach to physical location, provided, of course, that you have a capacity in those smaller centers to have proper education, proper access to culture and to health systems and to all those systems that you need to be close to. But the crucial thing is how to interconnect between knowledge and the economy.
Well, thanks for this great message and insight. And questions continue to appear in our chat. We have still 5 minutes, and so I will ask you for a more concise last answer. But our audience is still looking for a deeper connection, and if you could elaborate a little more on what do you see that could be exactly the role, because we know normally that smart specialization strategies and both nationally and regionally, they are defined with the stakeholders and with the involvement, but sometimes they are not really aligned with with the goals and the objectives that you have just mentioned. And so, what do you think, and what do you believe that might be the role? Should you think that it should be on a more bottom up perspective, the influence that University of Applied Sciences and the academia in general might have in this process? Or do you think that it should be a more top-down approach in which we know, for example, you've mentioned the relevance that digitalization will have in the future. But meanwhile, you touched also in the fact that there are lots of regions across Europe that doesn't have access to well, let's say wireless and internet connection, good wireless and internet connections. And if we take Portugal as an example, when we talk about low density territories, we know that they occupy a large portion of the territory. For example, in Alentejo, the region where I come from, we know that occupying 1/3 of the territory, we represent only 8% of the population. And this, of course, makes investments not as, I would say, as feasible as they should be from an a solely economic perspective. And so how do you think that the academia, the University of Applied Science, might influence and have a more active role in the development of those strategies, not to make them so top down, but a little bit more bottom up?
Well, one of the aspects, this is a very crucial thing. How do you operationalize this? And this depends on how centralized and decentralized the country is, of course, also. Because if you don't have the mechanics for listening to the stakeholders, for the stakeholders to be also owners of decisions, it is more difficult to hear them. What we ask in our texts, and for the time being, countries have been working on the programs for recovery and resilience, and according to the legislation, and we asked member states to go and to consult the stakeholders. And I wonder if you have, I'm sorry to be provocative, but have you participated in the discussion? Have you written? Have you made proposals, concrete proposals, not generalized criticism? Because let's go to the concrete. What have you proposed? And now we have another period, that is a period of, I mean, everybody. Some countries have gotten fast. Some countries are going slower. But now, I mean, when we look at the amount of what certain countries call the bazooka, the program of recovery and resilience. Let's take Portugal as an example. It has 14 billion euros of grants, but the period, I mean, the usual funds, cohesion funds, for that will be active for from 21 to 27, they have 24 billion of grants, so it's almost the double. So and this has got to have a public discussion as well. And of course, one thing that I associate with money is responsibility. Responsibility that has got to be assumed by everybody, because if this is taxpayers' money, this is for the country to speed up growth, to add value, to do things that you'd not have done if it wasn't for this support. And this is something that we have got to bear in mind. But having said this, the Commission cannot interfere with the options of member states. Some are very centralized, some are very decentralized. But a centralized country has got to have more trouble and more intelligence to go into the ground and to try to figure out what is the development strategy for that area. And in Alentejo, we did that at a certain point, because you need anchors, you need mid-sized towns, cities on which you can anchor those services that cannot be all done through the internet. You have got to make the internet accessible, but you have to create the cultural conditions, and you have Evra, and you have Beja, and you have interesting programs in Mertula, and and you had the big project of Alqueva, and you had a lot of I mean, how are we managing these opportunities? How can we figure out the relationship between what the research that we do and the business opportunities on the ground? How are you protecting the environment with a big opportunity like Alqueva? This is a question that requires what are the good practices that we have got to follow. What are But then you have all the museums and the quality and the touristic capacities of the inside, so you have got to find out what are the anchors for development on the ground. And for this you need to reinforce the local actors, or we need to have an intelligence at the central level to research on what is the right development strategy according to the different areas of the country. If you are talking about Beiras in Portugal, you may talk about historical villages and Covilhã and all the industrial tradition. But if you are talking about Douro, you are talking about the research on wine growing, and in Alentejo, you may be doing research on biodiversity protection and research against processes of desertification. And in Algarve, you may have another concept. But for this, you need to first be attentive to the opening of consultations, be active and constructive and vocal and clear in what you say, and prepare yourselves also. If you asked me, so I'm sorry, I usually don't give advice if I'm not
No, no,
asked
perfect.
for, but in this case you asked. So but be prepared to make the trade-off between doing pure research in which people are evaluated according to the publications they produce, and the need to be prepared to answer the specific questions that one needs. I asked from the universities when I was Minister of Environment. I asked for support, technical support for certain issues on which I needed it, and the university would only deliver with such a time and the time frame and such a theoretical approach to things that it was useless, to be frank. I mean, this was a long time ago, but I hope now things are
Things are
very
better. Are better.
they are much better. But prepare yourselves to deal with consumers as well, and make the right trade-off in which you do both things, but you don't kill one with the other.
No. Okay, dear Commissioner, it was a great pleasure to have you. Unfortunately, our schedule it's really tight, and we need to move for our next plenary speaker that we can all follow up on the next meeting room. So a last word to thank you a lot for the clearness and all the knowledge you shared with us on these 45 minutes. So it was a great pleasure for us to have you, and have a nice day, and a very continuation of the good job you have been doing on the commission.
We
Thanks
count
for
on your generation, on you. So please keep your energy flowing, and help this Europe to be a better Europe. Okay,
we,
for
we
your
will do
children.